All right, you know what time it is. It's time for another album that came out of nowhere and knocked me off my feet. So, without further ado, let's dive into it. This Heathen Land from Greenlung. So, Greenlung is being touted as a stoner metal band from the UK, I believe from Britain. This is their third full-length album after their first two records of Woodland Rites and Black Harvest. And we've got a smattering of members on this one. We've got Joseph Guest on bass, Matt Wiseman on drums, Scott Black on guitars, Tom Templar on vocals, and John Wright on organ. And I want to thank each of their members for having names that I can pronounce, because we all know how much fun it is for me to try to pronounce names that I can't pronounce. I dove into this album, I gave it a listen, and then I went back and I listened to their first two records, and I have to say, without a shadow of a doubt, this is by far their strongest work. As I mentioned, this one came out of nowhere for me. I fell in love with this record, and I dove so deep into their legacy. This album really is the album that I prayed and hoped for as a follow-up to Ghost's Meliora. This is for anybody that kind of thought that Ghost has been going a little too mainstream, a little too pop rock or stadium rock, and not enough the tongue-in-cheek kind of satanic fun times. But this isn't just a clone band for Ghost. This is their own entity, and we're getting flavors. Obviously, the most evident one is Ghost, but I'm also feeling a lot of that metal work from the 70s, specifically around the Black Sabbath kind of stuff. So, a lot of really good satanic imagery, a lot of really good dark and stoner aspects to it. The one thing that really sets these guys apart from most of their influences, honestly, is the playing styles that all of these individuals have together. And I really want to shout out specifically John Wright on the organ. His organ playing and keyboard playing is just I'm going to do that again, because it's the real highlight, and he comes in on 2 or 3 tracks, and it honestly reminds me of like a neo-prog outfit. And there's one band in specific that I hear it of very astutely. It's this very small neo-prog band from the early 90s called La Tulipe Noire from Greece, of all places, and they put out an album in the year 2000 called The Shattered Image, and the album ends with a track called The Haze. And that keyboard work on The Haze, it sounds both thematically and stylistically the exact same as a lot of the keyboard and organ work that we found on this album here. It's got lots of arpeggios, it's got a lot of like scale playing in that sense, and it just creates the perfect atmosphere for this very like satanic worshiping, very tongue-in-cheek stoner doom metal, that like the fact that nobody has done this style of playing before is it just boggles my mind. So right from the very beginning of this album, with the 1-2 punch of Prologue and the Forest Church, I knew I was into something very, very special and very, very fun. Even though I will say that if I have to kind of nitpick, that Tom Templar's vocal works are very, very similar to Tobias Forge's vocals from Ghost. That's maybe the only thing that I could say. Like, there are moments where I'm listening and I'm like, yeah, this guy is definitely channeling Ghost maybe a little too much. But I'm not going to fault him for that, because if it works, it works. And it definitely works on here, especially for that kind of 1-2 punch. And you know pretty much exactly what you're going to get from that point moving forward, because it's very tongue-in-cheek, satanic fun times. And I'm feeling a little bit of a concept on here, because it's very like vampire, very like Transylvania kind of styles, especially with the Forest Church, talking about the church not needing walls and you can worship however you want. And I really enjoy that kind of an aspect of it. But really, it kicks itself into high gear with Mountain Throne. And Mountain Throne has just one of the most fun guitar licks at the end of this track. I just love how straightforward and how rocking it is. You know, it's showcasing that, yeah, so Forest Church was kind of a little bit more intense, a little bit more sophisticated and complex. Mountain Throne is just straight up rock that I love. Then we come to Maxine, the Witch Queen, and this one, as well as One for Sorrow, are the two big highlights on this one. Maxine has one of those big organ sound moments that I friggin' love. It's got that driven power that I really, really enjoy, and it really gravitates me to. It just sucks me in, and I can't let go. And One for Sorrow is so heart-wrenching and so powerful. I think this one might be the big highlight on it, even though it's a little bit more somber and a little bit more dour in approach. Mountain Throne and Maxine are definitely a lot more powerful and a lot more energetic in that sense, a lot more rockin'. One for Sorrow is a lot more dour and a lot more subdued, but just as powerful, especially once we get into the second half of the track and it really allows itself to blossom. Like, this is where that doom stoner metal really comes into its fray. Like, once we get into that like, I can't help but just head rock and head bob my way to the finale of this track. That kind of covers the first half of the album. The second half is just as strong and just as boppin'. Even if it starts off a little bit on the dour side for Song of Stones, like, it's definitely much more atmospheric in that sense. It's definitely laying the groundwork for the second half, for the ancient ways to start and just clobber you right over the head with that really powerful, really intense rhythm styles. And I love that lead guitar that just pierces right through you. Like, especially in the kind of the latter half of that track where we're getting more into the experimental, like, this is what I would channel with, like, the acid rock, you know, the early Black Sabbath, that really early metal works, that 70s experimental rock where it was just off center that ever so much. Then we come into one of my favorite tracks of Hunter in the Sky. Like, if Maxine and One for Sorrow are like top tier, this one's probably my third favorite track. And again, it's that organ work that we have on there, that playing styles on the keyboard that really makes me melt. You know, it just makes me so happy and so excitable. I cannot help but love that track. I love the build-ups. I love the payoffs. It's everything that I love from progressive rock all the way into that stoner metal that I love. And then we come into Oceans of Time, which is a really heartfelt kind of, it reminds me of Dracula, because I think that's the whole mythos of it, talking about Mina and, you know, you are one of me and I am one of you. I've turned you into a vampire, so you are a part of me and I am also now a part of you. It's very heartfelt, and it's kind of like this love song for a vampire in that sense. You know, this being that is ageless, that kind of has shuffled off its mortal coil, but still lives, falling in love and having to wait essentially oceans of time for their loved one to return. So yeah, in the end, this Heathen Land gave me everything that I've been begging from a Ghost album for the past 4 years. You know, ever since Meliora hit, and Prequel was great and fine and fun, but this was the album that I was really hoping for. And this is one of my favorite albums of this year so far. You know, like, this one really came out and knocked me out. You know, it's really hard for me to find something that I don't like about this album, or even any kind of nitpicks. The only nitpick that I have is that, sure, they lean a little too hard on their influences. But when I love their influences and they essentially improve upon the influences that they are setting out to mimic, I can't fault them for that, because they're doing what I wish their influences did do. So yeah, this is one that I've been absolutely loving, and I will say this Heathen Land by Green Wulong is one I absolutely love with my whole heart. This is a run, don't walk. This is one that if you haven't listened to it yet, please go ahead and do so. You will not be disappointed. For anybody that's loved Ghost, that loves the stoner or doom metal, you're going to love this one. If you're a fan of Black Sabbath, if you're a fan of that kind of dirge rock or dirge metal, you're going to love this one. You know, you really, really are. I've been having a blast with this one. I've been having to force myself to put this on the side so that I could actually dive into other music that I need to review. So that is the signal and sign of a brilliant album. So yeah, that's what I've got for Green Lung's third album, This Heathen Land. What did you guys think about this album? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, please let me know by commenting down below. Because as I mentioned, Run, Don't Walk to Listen one. This one is definitely has the note seal of approval on it. So that's what I've got. That's what I've got. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.